probably gonna cry a few times during the course of this thing. I'm an emotional guy.
I keep coming back to the same uncomfortable question. Should we have seen what was coming?
I'd rather be the corny white rapper than the drugged out mess who can't even get out of his house. Overdosing is just not cool. There's no legendary romance. You don't go down in history because you overdosed. You just die.
Because years before Mac Miller died, the warning signs were already there.
You know, for a long time, it wasn't just in music, but I definitely was going through a drug problem and and I think it was more my state of mind.
And no, I'm not just talking about the drugs or the depression or the public struggles. What I'm also talking about is in the music and in the interviews. It was in the way he talked about himself.
I was one of those people. I was like, man, I'd be so much more interesting if I was like self-destructing all the time and depressed and hated myself. Like I'm so much more interesting that way and more creative.
And the more I thought about it, the harder it became to ignore. But here's where the story gets a little more complicated. Because when Mac Miller died in September of 2018,
we arrived to a heavy media and police presence here outside of the Studio City home of rapper Mac Miller. And authorities confirm here a death investigation is underway.
Investigators found text messages, drug purchases, counterfeit pills, and people connected to the drugs that killed him. So now I'm like, well, did he just get unlucky with some bad pills? Or was he already heading towards this tragedy long before that night?
I was in 5th grade, you know, and I was getting high, fucking thought I was James Bond and shit, and started running around the basement. And then the kid that I was getting high with, his older brother came down and was like, how old are you? And I was like 10, but I'm gonna be 11 in a month.
Today we're going to focus on the rise of Mac Miller and, more importantly, the warning signs people missed and the events that led to his final days. Let's talk about it. Before Mac Miller became the artist that we all knew and loved, he was just a kid from Pittsburgh named Malcolm James McCormick. Born on January 19, 1992, Mac developed a love for the music at a young age.
Now what you hear is not a test on rapping to the beat. Meet the groom and my fiddle and try and move their feet. Now I am Wally Man and I like to say hello.
He actually taught himself how to play multiple instruments, including the piano, guitar, drums, and bass. And while most kids were trying to figure out what they wanted to do with their lives, Mac already knew. Music was his plan. He started rapping as a teenager and quickly built a local following around Pittsburgh. What made Mac different was how quickly he connected with people his age. His music felt relatable, fun, and authentic. And that connection right there would eventually turn him into something bigger. In 2010, Mac released his mixtape Kids, which began attracting national attention. Songs like Nikes on My Feet helped introduce him to a much larger crowd, a much larger audience. He was slowly becoming one of the most talked about young rappers in the country. Then came Best Day Ever, and one of my personal favorites, Donald Trump.
I only have one thing to say. I hate you, Donald Trump.
And suddenly, Mac Miller wasn't just local anymore. At this point, he was a star. His debut studio album, Blue Slide Park, hit #1 on Billboard 200, making history as the first independently distributed debut album to reach the top spot in more than 15 years. It seemed like everything was falling into place for him. He had the fame, got some success, and had the money. And more importantly, he had a solid growing fan base. But now that we know what we know, I feel like this was only the beginning of his story. Because as Mac's career continued to grow, so did the struggles that would eventually define his life much later.
I didn't make the basketball team. I just figured that, like, I don't know. You're getting a whiskey moment. I just figured that maybe my dad would start loving me then.
From the outside looking in, life seemed pretty good. But as we all know, success comes with its own set of problems. Because now there were expectations. Fans expected another hit. Record labels expected bigger numbers.
Self-doubt is, you know, like if you have a creative mind, you're gonna doubt a lot of things.
Now, all of a sudden, the same kid from Pittsburgh who was making music for fun was feeling a different kind of pressure now. And there was another problem. As Mac continued to grow as an artist, people had already started putting him into a box. A lot of critics dismissed him as a frat rapper. Others didn't take him seriously as an artist. And even though the fans loved him and loved what he was doing, Mac seemed determined to prove that he was capable of much more. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because around this time, something started to change. Not just in the music, but in Mac himself. The songs started to get darker. The themes became heavier. And some of the struggles that would eventually define much of his life were becoming harder to ignore. One of the first places you can see this change is in his album Macadelic, released in 2012. And if you compare it to the projects that made him famous, the difference is hard to miss. The music felt darker, it felt more isolated, it was more personal, and instead of celebrating the lifestyle that came with success, Mac started asking deeper questions about himself and where his life was heading. Throughout Macadelic, he made references to lean, the devil's lettuce, psychedelics, and substance use throughout the whole album. But what stands out to me isn't necessarily the drugs themselves, it's the mindset behind them. At one point, Mac questioned what he was doing with his life, and then at another point, he wondered what would happen if he died. And it's crazy because back when the album came out, I didn't think much of it. But after he died and I look back, it makes me think, did he know he was already gonna meet that tragic end? Then things got even darker, because in 2013, Mac released the album Watching Movies with the Sound Off. And by this time, the themes of isolation, addiction, depression, and morality weren't just showing up occasionally. It became a major part of his music. One lyric described him as a drug addict standing on stage beside Jay-Z. Another talked about the feeling that perfection was completely unattainable. And then came the mixtape Faces, released in 2014. If there was one project that genuinely made people start worrying about Mac, it was this one. Faces wasn't just a mixtape about party. It wasn't just about drugs. It felt like Mac was documenting his struggles in real time. The mixtape was filled with references to that powder, pills, lean, PCP, overdoses, and death. At one point, he talked about dying before detox. At another point, he referenced ending up in a coffin because of a drug habit. And maybe the most unsettling line of all was in the song Brand Name, when he warned dealers not to mix his drugs with anything dangerous. I swear it feels like Mac was almost predicting his tragic end way before it even happened. And the thing is, it wasn't just showing up in his music. He spoke about his struggles in interviews and openly admitted he had a drug problem.
Hey, what's up, man? You good? I'm hearing things.
Yeah, I had a little battle, you know what I mean? I did I did some time.
What was the drug of choice?
There's a lot of the...
Don't make him backslide into his drug use.
Oh, man.
It's okay. It's okay, man.
Drug of choice, man. Drug of choice.
He talked about being messed up all the time. He said the constant use of drugs was beginning to eat away at his mind. He said fame was a tricky situation where public perception and reality started to blend together for him. It really seemed like Mac was carrying a weight that nobody else could really see.
Fame is tricky because you read what's said about you, then you know what you know to be true, and the lines start to blur.
When the album Swimming arrived in 2018, you could hear both sides of the battle. You can hear the growth, you can hear the self-awareness and the genuine desire to move forward. But you could also hear the anxiety, the depression, and the exhaustion. That constant struggle to stay afloat mentally. And when you put it all together, I can't help but to ask if the warning signs were already there. During this time, Mac was also in a relationship with Ariana Grande. The two had actually known each other for years. They first worked together back in 2013 on Ariana's breakout hit, The Way. Their friendship gradually turned into something more. By 2016, they were officially together. They collaborated music together, they attended events together, and during some of the most difficult moments of Ariana's life, like the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017, Mac was there supporting her.
Just a horrific scene playing out in Manchester, England. An explosion at an Ariana Grande concert at the Manchester Arena. These are the images coming in at this hour. Authorities have confirmed multiple fatalities and many injured.
For a while, it looked like the relationship was a positive force in both of their lives. Unfortunately though, behind the scenes, things weren't that simple. As the years went on, Mac's struggle with addiction and sobriety continued to put pressure on the relationship, and in early 2018, the two quietly went their separate ways. When Ariana confirmed the breakup, there wasn't any public drama. In fact, both of them were surprisingly respectful about it. But while the breakup appeared peaceful, what happened next definitely got people's attention. Just days after the breakup became public, Mac crashed his Mercedes G-Wagon into a utility pole and was arrested for DUI. So the internet did what the internet does, and people started connecting the two events. Social media exploded with comments blaming Ariana for what happened. See, many people thought Mac was spiraling because of the breakup. Others pointed to the fact that Ariana had already moved on and started seeing Pete Davidson shortly afterward. One viral post claimed that Mac crashing his vehicle after Ariana left him was one of the saddest stories in Hollywood. So eventually, Ariana had to respond. She pushed back against the idea that it was her fault. She also said it was not her responsibility to save someone from their own struggles. She made it clear that she cared for Mac, but the relationship became difficult. I can understand why some people looked at the breakup and connected it to everything that happened afterward, but at the same time, it's impossible to ignore the fact that Mac was already going through addiction problems, depression, isolation, and the years of warning signs that existed long before the relationship ended. Could the breakup have made things worse? Sure, maybe. Could it have added more pain to a situation that was already difficult? Of course, absolutely. But by this point, it was pretty clear that Mac's struggles didn't begin with Ariana Grande, and they weren't going to magically disappear if she had stayed. The reality is that the problems had been building for years. The breakup and the DUI just made it a little bit impossible for everyone to ignore. And unfortunately, things were about to get much worse. In September of 2018, Mac was preparing for what should have been one of the biggest moments of his career. Swimming had just been released and the reviews were strong, and it seemed like Mac was genuinely excited about what was coming next.
I'm back, man. I got another record.
Yeah, and you look good, man. There's light in your eyes.
Thank you. There is.
Was there light in your eyes when you started making this album?
Yeah,
It was.
a lot.
On September 3rd, Mac performed a small show at the Hotel Cafe in Hollywood to help promote swimming.
Yeah, so the album's out now. Go get it.
But this would be the last time his fans would ever see him perform live. Later, Mac reached out to Cameron Pettit and ordered what he believed were oxycodone pills, Xanax, and that powder. And unfortunately, that set off a chain of events that could never be undone. On September 5th, around 2:30 in the morning, Pettit arrived at Mac's home and delivered the drugs. Mac had no idea the pills were laced. Then came September 7th. In the hours before his death, Mac posted a video on his Instagram story. The clip showed a vinyl record playing his song So It Goes. This would become one of the final things he ever posted. And then sometime between 8 and 10 that morning, Mac Miller died from the laced pills he was sold. He was only 26 years old. Mac Miller's body was discovered by his assistant. His assistant frantically called 911 and the paramedics arrived shortly.
When's the last time you saw him or talked to him?
Yesterday, please, hurry.
Stay with me on the line, okay? We're already on the way there now. I'm going to give you instructions. Can you wake him up?
And at 11:51 a.m., Mac Miller was officially pronounced dead. Investigators looked into where the drugs came from and eventually uncovered a chain of people connected to the counterfeit pills. Phone records showed that Mac had contacted the dealer Cameron Pettit. Pettit didn't have the drugs that Mac was asking for, so he reached out to a supplier named Stephen Walter. Walter then sent his courier Ryan Rivas to deliver the pills to Pettit. Pettit then delivered those pills to Mac Miller. And after Mac Miller's death became public, Cameron Pettit appeared to panic. Pettit told a friend, most likely I will die in jail. And in another message, he talked about getting off the grid and moving to another country. He also attempted to delete any communication connected to the drug deal itself. And once investigators collected enough evidence, they eventually arrested the men connected to the supply chain. The cases would take years to work through the federal court system. But eventually, the people involved began pleading guilty. Walter admitted his role in distributing fentanyl. Rivas also pleaded guilty to distributing fentanyl. Walter was ultimately sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. Rivas received just under 11 years in federal prison, and Pettit also faced federal consequences. And while the investigation exposed the people connected to the drugs that killed Mac, for me, it doesn't answer the bigger question. Because depending on how you look at it, it can feel like two tragedies happening at the same time. The tragedy of a talented artist who spent years struggling with his own demons, and the tragedy of counterfeit pills that ended his life before he ever got a chance to fully overcome those demons.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years, Mac?
Hopefully, doing a lot of different things in entertainment. Maybe have a kid.
You're gonna be bigger than you are now. Much bigger.
That's what I hope.
I predicted for you.
Thanks, man.
So I'll direct these questions to you. Do you think Mac was foreshadowing his own demise? Or do you think if he was never sold those pills, would he have eventually faced those demons and overcome them? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you stay till the end, I really do appreciate it. And if you like this video, you might also enjoy my Matthew Perry video. That's where I explore exactly what happened after his death and why his story didn't end in that hot tub. And also, if you want to support the channel, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.